Picasso didn't just want to be the world's best artist. He wanted to destroy Henri Matisse. And it was this specific painting that provoked him. 1906's Le Bonheur de Vivre. It was a masterpiece. Picasso saw it, hated how much everyone loved it, and basically went into a jealous rage for 6 months. Prior to this, there was no drama between the two, but for some reason, this painting provoked a feud that would last their entire lifetime. After seeing the artwork, Picasso locked himself in the studio to create Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. Look at these faces. They aren't just art. They were a direct middle finger to Matisse's soft style. Picasso was trying to make art that was uglier and scarier, just to prove Matisse was way too soft and safe. But here's the kicker. After Picasso won and invented Cubism, Matisse is the first person to call it genius. They spent the rest of their lives obsessed with each other, trading paintings like Pokemon cards just to see what the other was up to. Andy Warhol wanted to be a machine. He literally told people he wanted to be made of plastic. But the truth, he was the most anxious man in New York. Everyone knows the silver wig and the soup cans, but that was a mask. Warhol was so terrified of being ugly or normal that he created a character to hide behind. He was obsessed with fame because he thought it would make him immortal. After he was nearly assassinated in 1968, he became so paranoid he started recording every single conversation he had for 20 years, and he called his tape recorder his wife. We see the bright colors in his work, but Warhol, he saw the void. He turned the world into a factory because he was too scared to let anyone see the real Andy. So, is he a genius? Or just the world's best salesman? That's the true question. In 1978, a 17-year-old high school dropout was sleeping on park benches signing mysterious graffiti tags on Lower East Side walls. Just 5 years later, Jean-Michel Basquiat was painting in Armani suits, working alongside Andy Warhol, and taking the fine art world by storm. His raw, energetic, neo-expressionist skulls and crowns redefined the contemporary art world. In 2017, one of his skull paintings sold at auction for $110.5 million, setting the record for the highest price ever paid for an American artist's work. David Bowie had 2 different colored eyes, but the truth is much crazier. In 1962, a 15-year-old Bowie got into a fistfight with his best friend George Underwood over a girl they both wanted to date. Underwood punched Bowie square in the left eye with a ring on his finger, tearing the delicate muscle that contracts the pupil. The injury left Bowie's left eye permanently dilated. That constant enlarged pupil absorbed light differently, creating an otherworldly alien gaze that became Bowie's most iconic visual trademark. Back in 18th century Europe, high society rules strictly forbade smiling with your mouth open in formal art. Showing your teeth was considered low class, trashy, and associated with madness. When Vigée Lebrun exhibited a self-portrait holding her young daughter with a gentle, open-mouthed smile, critics were shocked, calling it an ancient impropriety. As Marie Antoinette's official court painter, she defied formal conventions to show real warmth, emotion, and motherly love. Between 1980 and 1985, Keith Haring created thousands of rapid chalk drawings inside New York City subway stations. He targeted empty black paper panels waiting for new advertisements, executing dozens of dynamic drawings a day in under 3 minutes before police could cite him for vandalism. Commuters fell in love with his simple, radiant dancing figures. His underground subway gallery turned him into an international pop art icon, whose bold visual language still defines street culture today. Prince called Little Richard the architect of everything he was. But did you know he left a secret message for him in one of his most famous songs? Most people see the outfits and the hair and think they just shared a stylist. But Prince was obsessed with the spirit of Little Richard's music. In Purple Rain, there's a specific vocal run that Prince admitted was a direct tribute to a 1950s Little Richard track. It wasn't just a cover. It was a secret handshake between 2 icons who felt like they were both from another planet. When little Richard heard it, he didn't just hear a hit song. He heard his own legacy being carried forward. Prince once said, "There would be no me without him." His name was Paul Cézanne. While Impressionists focused on light, Cézanne wanted to break the world down into basic geometric forms. He painted still life so slowly that the fruit would literally rot before he finished a canvas. He painted objects from multiple angles at the exact same time, breaking traditional perspective rules that had existed since the Renaissance. When a young Pablo Picasso and Henri Matisse saw his revolutionary work, they were stunned. Both icons later declared, "Cézanne is the father of us all." At the 1967 Monterey Pop Festival, Jimi Hendrix ended his set by kneeling over his Fender, pouring lighter fluid over it and setting it ablaze. It became the single most legendary photo in rock history. But Hendrix didn't just do it for the shock value. The Who had just performed earlier that night and smashed their gear to pieces. Hendrix knew he had to top them, calling the act a sacrifice offering of the instrument he loved the most. He literally sacrificed his guitar to rock history and created a pure pop culture moment that lives in immortality. Look closely at Edward Hopper's famous painting Nighthawks. Do you notice the subtle architectural detail that makes the scene feel deeply lonely? There's no door leading outside. Painted in 1942, right after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Hopper captured the quiet anxiety and isolation felt across America during World War II. Dark, empty street corner, like a glowing glass cage. Because there's no visible entrance or exit door, the customers inside are visibly trapped together, sitting close to each other without speaking a single word. Hopper claimed he wasn't intentionally painting isolation, but admitted, unconsciously, he probably was. "I was painting the loneliness of a large city." In his late 60s, Monet developed severe cataracts in both eyes. As the lenses in his eyes hardened and turned yellow, his perception of color was warped. He could no longer see subtle greens, blues, or whites. Instead, everything took on a muddy, reddish-yellow tint. Monet was so frustrated by his failing eyesight that he began labeling his paint tubes by numbers so he wouldn't accidentally mix up his colors. His paintings became blurrier, darker, and far more abstract. In 1923, he finally agreed to have cataract surgery to remove the lens from his left eye. Because eye surgery back then removed the natural UV filter in his eye, Monet gained a rare visual ability. He could perceive ultraviolet light. When he returned to his garden to paint, he saw water lilies not as green and red, but as glowing, ghostly shades of violet and blue. Before 1911, the Mona Lisa was just an ordinary painting hanging in the Louvre that most visitors walked right past. Until a museum handyman hid in a broom closet overnight, popped the painting off the wall, wrapped it in his coat, and walked out. For 2 entire days, nobody even noticed it was gone. Guards assumed it was being photographed. When news broke, people literally stood in line just to stare at the empty space on the wall where she used to hang. By the time the police caught the thief, 2 years later, Da Vinci's portrait had become the most famous painting on planet Earth. Salvador Dali refused to pay for expensive dinners with cash, and he figured out an absolute genius hack to eat at the top French restaurants for free. When the bill would arrive after hosting a massive table of friends, Dali would casually pull out his personal checkbook and write out the full amount. But before handing it back to the waiter, he would flip the check over, pull out his pen, and draw a quick custom sketch on the back of the check. He knew no restaurant owner in their right mind would ever cash a check for $500 if cashing it meant destroying an original drawing worth $50,000. He literally turned dinner bills into priceless museum pieces. In 1950s France, it was strictly illegal for women to wear pants in public without explicit government permission. But Rosa Bonheur one of the most famous animal painters in history, wasn't about to let the law stop her. Bonheur was an openly queer woman who lived openly with her female partner for over 50 years. To paint her monumental animal scene like the horse fair, she had to spend hours sketching in muddy horse markets, slaughterhouses, and livestock fairs dominated by men. Long Victorian skirts were dangerous and impractical around heavy horses, so Bonheur went to the Paris police headquarters every 6 months to renew an official legal document called Permission de Travestissement, a license to cross-dress. She became one of only a dozen women of all of France granted legal permission to wear trousers. Her pants allowed her to paint freely, making her financially independent and a trailblazing pioneer for women's rights and queer visibility. Alfred Hitchcock built the creepy Bates Mansion for 1960 Psycho. He based the entire architectural design on a famous 1925 oil painting by American realist Edvard Hopper called The House by the Railroad. Hopper's painting featured a solitary Victorian home isolated beside a bleak railway line, capturing intense feeling of loneliness and dread. Hitchcock recreated the exact porch, roofline, and haunting shadows to build the most terrifying house in cinematic history. In 1967, two art students named Gilbert and George met at art school in London, fell in love, and decided to do something unprecedented. They turned themselves into the artwork. Declaring themselves living sculptures, Gilbert and George wore identical tailored tweed suits, walked in sync, and turned every aspect of their daily lives into a continuous performance piece. They lived together, worked together, and created massive, brightly colored grid artwork addressing queer identity, religion, and social taboo. For over 50 years, they refused to separate their personal life from their artistic creations, stating, "Being natural is such a pose." They proved that art isn't just something you hang on a wall. It's how you choose to live your life. Most babies' first words are simple things, like mama or dada, but Pablo Picasso was not a normal baby. According to his mother, his first spoken word was pencil, but in Spanish, because he was Spanish. Picasso was born into an artistic family. His father was a painter and art professor who quickly recognized his son's supernatural talent. Before Picasso could speak complete sentences or write the alphabet, he was making detailed sketches in the dirt with his fingers. By the time he was just 13 years old, his technical skills in realistic drawing had surpassed that of his father's. There's a famous story that one afternoon his father left young Picasso alone to finish a painting of a realistic study of a pigeon. He was so humble and overwhelmed by his 13-year-old son that he handed Picasso his own palette and brushes and swore he would never paint again for the rest of his life. In 1945, MGM made a black and white film adaptation of The Picture of Dorian Gray. The entire movie was filmed in crisp monochrome, except for brief, shocking seconds. Every time Dorian committed an evil deed, the camera suddenly flashed into a horrific, decaying oil painting shot in full, lurid Technicolor. MGM hired artist Ivan Albright, who spent a full year using real, rotting, organic materials to paint the terrifying canvas. The stunt was so visually shocking that the painting became an instant piece of horror art history. If you picked up one of Leonardo da Vinci's private notebooks right now, you wouldn't be able to read a single sentence. Every single page was written completely in reverse, from right to left, with every letter flipped backwards. To read his brilliant ideas on anatomy, flight, and engineering, you literally had to hold the pages up to a mirror. For centuries, historians debated why he would do this. Was he trying to hide his revolutionary discoveries from the Catholic Church? Was he keeping a secret from rivals trying to steal his inventions? The actual answer is surprisingly practical. Da Vinci was left-handed. Back in the 15th century, writing with a feathered quill in wet ink from left to right meant your hand would drag across the page and smear everything. Writing in reverse allowed him to draw and write instantly without smudging a single drop. He turned an everyday left-handed struggle into the most famous secret code in art history. In 1996, the actress Tilda Swinton and artist Cornelia Parker created a performance art piece called The Maybe. Swinton laid completely asleep inside a glass display case inside a London gallery for 8 hours a day, surrounded only by a mattress and a jug of water. Visitors stood in line for hours just to watch famous Hollywood actors sleep inside a museum exhibit, blurring the lines between celebrity culture and fine art. Vincent van Gogh created over 2,000 artworks in his lifetime. But when he died, he was convinced he was an absolute failure. Do you know how many paintings he actually sold while he was alive? Just one. It was called Red Vineyard, and it sold for 400 francs, about 2,000 in today's money. Van Gogh spent his entire life relying on his brother for financial support, trading paintings for food or tubes of paint, and battling severe mental illness. He famously said, "I cannot change the fact that my paintings do not sell." Yet today, his masterpiece Starry Night is priceless, and his paintings regularly sell at auction for over $100 million. He never knew he would become one of the most famous human beings to ever walk the earth. Did you know Dolly Parton is secretly responsible for one of the biggest pop culture TV shows of the 90s? In 1986, Dolly co-founded Sand Dollar Productions. Her team picked up an unheard-of script about a high school girl fighting vampires and produced the original Buffy the Vampire movie, followed by the hit TV series starring Sarah Michelle Gellar. Dolly chose to remain uncredited as an executive producer on screen so her massive country music fame wouldn't distract viewers from the show's dark feminist energy. Before smartphones existed, the Dutch master Rembrandt created the most detailed visual selfie campaign in history. For over 40 years, Rembrandt painted, etched, and drew nearly 100 self-portraits. In his 20s, he painted himself making goofy faces to practice facial expressions. In his 30s, he dressed in wealthy, luxurious clothes to show off his massive success. But when his fortune collapsed and his family passed away, he didn't stop painting. Instead of hiding his wrinkles, gray hair, and tired eyes, he documented his own aging process with brutal, honest realism up until his death at age 63. He created a timeless visual biography that predicted modern selfie culture by 400 years. American Gothic by Grant Wood is one of the most recognizable paintings in American history. People usually assume it shows a stern farmer standing next to his wife in front of a farmhouse. First, the two people aren't husband and wife. The woman was Wood's younger sister Nan, and the man was his local dentist. Wood made them pose separately because his sister was embarrassed by the age gap. Second, Grant Wood was a closeted gay man living in conservative Iowa during the 1930s. Art historians believe that the painting's stern, defensive atmosphere reflected Wood's internal feelings of oppression and the strict societal expectations of small-town Midwest life. Wood channeled his feelings of being an outsider into satire and precision, creating a timeless masterpiece that parodied and honored rural America all at once. February 12, 1994, the eyes of the entire world were focused on Norway for the opening day of the Lillehammer Winter Olympics. Taking advantage of the distraction, two thieves pulled off one of the easiest, most embarrassing art heists in history. At 6:30 a.m., the men pulled up to the National Gallery in Oslo, set a simple aluminum ladder against the wall, climbed up to the second-story window, and smashed the glass. They walked inside, cut the wire holding Edvard Munch's masterpiece, The Scream, and climbed right back down the ladder with the painting worth over $50 million. The whole operation took less than 50 seconds. The museum's alarms did go off, but security guards took so long to respond that by the time they arrived, the thieves were long gone. Fortunately, 3 months later, undercover British police set up a sting operation and recovered the painting completely undamaged. When The 27-year-old Oscar Wilde arrived in America in 1882 for a lecture tour. He boasted that he was introducing true culture to the American public. Well, when Mark Twain heard this, he was not impressed. Twain publicly ridiculed Wilde's flamboyant velvet jackets and knee breeches. Wilde fired back, dismissing American literature as crude and unrefined. The feud reached its peak when Twain famously quipped, "I have sent for a complete set of Wilde's work, and I intend to read them if I'm ever sentenced to hard labor." Michelangelo's ceiling in the Sistine Chapel is considered one of human history's greatest achievements. But he hated every single second of making it. In fact, Michelangelo didn't even consider himself a painter. He was a sculptor through and through. But when Pope Julius II demanded he painting the ceiling in 1508, Michelangelo actually suspected his rivals, including the painter Raphael, had set him up. He believed they convinced the Pope to give him the job so he would fail publicly and ruin his reputation. For 4 grueling years, Michelangelo worked in brutal physical conditions. Contrary to popular myth, he did not lay down on scaffolding. He stood up, craning his neck backwards for hours at a time until paint consistently dripped directly into his eyes, permanently damaging his vision. His body was in such agony that he actually wrote a bitter poem to a friend, complete with a caricature drawing of himself describing his stomach pushing into his chest and his spine folded backwards. To get revenge on the Pope's advisors who kept harassing him, he painted his worst enemies directly into the scene, including painting an official in the underworld with a snake biting his groin. To paint a violent ocean storm, most artists sit comfortably inside a dry studio, but J.M.W. Turner wasn't most artists. To create his masterpiece Snowstorm Steamboat Off the Harbor's Mouth, 67-year-old Turner claimed he actually asked sailors to tie him to the mast of the ship during a blinding blizzard off the coast of England. For 4 agonizing hours, he stood on the deck as winds and icy water crashed over him so he could experience the terrifying power of nature firsthand. Critics laughed at the painting when it was shown, calling it soap suds and whitewashed. Turner fired back. "I didn't paint to be understood," he said. "I painted to show what such a scene was like." Brazilian artist Vic Muniz creates portraits using material most people throw away: junk, sugar, wire, and garbage. In his infamous project Wasteland, Muniz spent 3 years working with garbage pickers in one of the world's largest landfills near Rio de Janeiro. He arranged thousands of discarded items on a massive studio floor to reconstruct iconic classical paintings, photographing them from a crane platform above. He then auctioned the resulting prints for over $250,000, giving all proceeds back to the landfill workers to build a community center. Muniz proves that art can transform literal trash into life-changing value. In 1969, sculptor Forrest Myers wanted to send art into outer space. When NASA ignored his proposal, Myers secretly coordinated with an engineer at Bell Labs to engrave 6 tiny drawings onto a ceramic chip smaller than a postage stamp. A sympathetic engineer tucked the Moon Museum wafer inside the insulation blankets of Apollo 12. To this day, this tiny ceramic wafer sits undisturbed on the lunar surface.